Hello and welcome back. Now we're going to take a look at JSON. JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation. It's what's known as a data exchange format. And a data exchange format is basically a way to transmit data between client and server, or to also transmit information just between incompatible programming languages. So if I have a Ruby script and I have a Node script that I need the two of them to talk to each other, then I need some sort of exchange format that both are going to understand. And there's a couple. There's XML, there's YAML, but JSON far and away is the most popular data exchange format. So we're going to take a brief look at that. You can see here I already got my debugger set up, so I'm going to reload the page. And if you want to get it bigger or smaller, press Command or Control plus, and that'll zoom in on your debugger bar, and Command minus will zoom back out. So now I'm going to reload, and you can see it stop right here. Now the notable feature about JSON is that right here in JavaScript, you can have keys and they don't require double quotes unless they are, as we covered, invalid names, in which case you will need to double quote them. But that doesn't work for JSON. JSON must have double quoted around the name and also around the values. So both key and value must be double quoted. So then it's going to run JSON.stringify, which is one of two methods that are used on the JSON object, stringify and parse. From there, I'm going to jump to the next one. And we can see what it's going to do. It's going to take that and it's going to stringify it. And that represents a little bit differently in our IDE than it does right here, but this is closer to correct of what it's actually going to do. It's going to look like that. And that's because whenever certain things happen inside of the Chrome debug tool, in order for it to render it, it has to change it. So what you see in the debugger bar is unfortunately not always 100% accurate. So do keep that in mind. Next, we now have our stringified version of JSON, and now we're going to do the opposite, which is parse it. That's going to take it from a string and convert it back into an actual JavaScript object so that now we can mess around with it. And if we were to do parse.name, you can see we're going to get back Bob. Now we are going to look at what's known as the reviver function, which is the second optional argument to the parse object. It takes a name and a value, so you have your key and your value pairs inside of there. And here I'm just going to set up the variable and give it a bunch of different keys and values. Then it's going to run through them. And if the modulus of that is equal to 0, which basically means that I have an even number, it's going to return the negative of that. And if I have anything else, it's just going to return the original value. And you can see right here that what it did, whenever we hover over 2, is anything that's even got reversed to the negative, and anything that is odd just stay the original number. Now you can also delete things from a JSON object by not passing in a value or just returning undefined. Either of which of these two things will work, but the root element is going to be an empty double-quoted string, which is weird, but that's this enclosing guy. So here to the end over there, it's hard to hover over it, but that opening string to that opening string will be considered an object. If you don't return it, the only thing JSON.parse does when you pass it a function is return null. So you must always make sure that you check for one of the names to be empty string, and you must return that back to the original program that executes it. So because of that gotcha and because of how weird it is, I don't ever use the reviver function. If you need to transform something, wait until we get to maps and other ways of transforming arrays, and that'll be a much better solution than attempting to use this. The one nice thing about it, though, is this is what's known as a recursive filter, so it will recurse and recursively map and recursively filter through things for free. So that is the one and only reason why I would ever recommend using this. For the most part, I recommend just parsing it and getting the original value back like we did up here. Finally, JSON is one of the few things in JavaScript that will actually throw an error. So for example, this empty object is not a valid JSON object. So when we attempt to parse it, it's going to throw an error. And you can see right there, it gives you this very unhelpful error that says unexpected token, and a little bit better, it says there's a syntax error. Fortunately, we're going to capture that, and then we're going to expect that error to equal an error, which of course it does. So that covers everything you need to know about JSON. There's not that much to it. You take a raw object and you stringify it. That will give you a JSON version of it. If you receive a JSON object from the server, then you parse it and that'll split it back up into a JavaScript object. And then finally, if you absolutely must, you can pass an optional argument that will allow you to transform what you got back. But I highly recommend you not do that. And make sure that whenever you're trying to parse something, you have a try-catch block. Otherwise, you're going to throw an error and your program's going to hold execution.